So can you tell me a little bit about where you've come from, what you're doing?
Yes, I've written lots of books. I mean, that's my main gig, I would say, is writing. And to be able to read my own stories to my children is a very magical thing.
Hello, I'm Nicole, and welcome to The Big Chat. And today I'm extremely excited to be talking to my personal legend, friend, and podcast producer guru, as well as many other things, Giles Paley-Phillips. Hello, Giles.
Hello. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. Yeah. It's a bit cold today, I have to say. I'm a bit cold.
It's really, really very cold, actually. And I think this studio that I'm sat in has seen warmer days, let's put it that way, especially as it's not being used quite as much as it should be when we can see you person to person.
I know.
But for now, it's lovely to see you sat there.
Well, I'm in my bedroom.
You are?
Yeah. It's the only place in the house that has the obligatory books that everybody needs in the Zoom chat. So
I heard you mention this on your podcast. Now, for those who don't know, Giles has a very famous podcast. Yes, it is. It is called Blank, which you do with Jim Daly, don't you? Can you tell Giles? I mean, not only have you written many, many books and done many things. I just assume everyone knows everything about you, but of course they might not. So, can you tell me a little bit about where you've come from, what you're doing, and also tell us a bit about Blank. So just give us a bit of a bit.
You want like a 15-minute monologue now?
Yeah, please. No pressure.
Okay, so oh god. Well, yes, I've written lots of books. I mean, that's my main gig, I would say, is writing. And the idea of a podcast came about really during kind of a sort of downtime in the writing. I mean, I've been writing for, I guess, probably pretty much since my eldest was born, Eli. And he's just coming up to, he'll be 14 this year. So that's a bit mad to think that he's going to be 14, teenager. But so I started writing my first book when he was born. Pretty much just before that, I kind of wanted to write a story for him. I'd been in bands and stuff before that. That was my kind of main thing before that, was trying to be a rock and roll star and become, just make it in a band. And we toured around the country and all that kind of stuff. But like a lot of these things, they never work out quite how you want them to. And I think I was always looking for I've always been looking for other creative outlets. So I think when the band broke up, it was a case of trying to find something else that I could do. And I'd always written lyrics and as well as the music to some of our songs. So writing seemed to be a segue for me. And I think a lot of children's writers come to their profession through their children and wanting to create a story for their children that they can read to them. And that bedtime story time is such a precious time, I find. And to be able to read my own stories to my children is a very magical thing. So that's kind of how it started. And then sort of I've segued into doing other things along the way. And in more recent years, it's been the podcast.
And the podcast, I mean, you've got quite a few followers on Twitter at the moment. I think you're up to about 307,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
And the podcast's been pretty popular as well, hasn't it? I mean, you've had some amazing guests. I mean, personal favourites: Dawn French, Wim Hof, Stephen Fry, Gary Lineker, Fred with the surname I can't pronounce.
Fred Siriax, yeah, he was on last week. Yeah, I mean, we've been. I mean, the thing is that the podcast has become popular and well known because we've had some incredible guests on, and that's kind of luck more than judgment. Just me sort of reaching out to people, like you say, via mediums like Twitter. And basically sort of begging them to come on the show. And I mean, it's been an amazing experience doing it. I never thought we would, I mean, we're nearly up to 100 episodes. I never thought we'd get to that. It was kind of a thing that Jim and I started. Jim Daly's a comedian. We know each other through our mutual love of Crystal Palace Football Club. He does a podcast about Crystal Palace. And we talked about kind of collaborating in some way. I always like collaboration's always been a big thing for me, and being a writer, you don't get to collaborate as much in the creative process. The actual publishing of the book is quite a collaborative bit, but actually creating or writing a story is quite a solitary thing. So I'm always keen to look for collaborators and working with other people. That's always something I've enjoyed doing. Back to the being in a band and stuff where you're working with other people. And so I had this idea, and I said to Jim, look, I'm having creative problems at the moment, and but just really be good to get some advice for some other people. It could be an interesting podcast. There's a lot of interview podcasts around, but I thought you might be slightly different dynamic if there's two of us talking. And he was like, well, I'm going through a similar thing. He was saying that, he was struggling with getting back into stand up. He'd had a break from it, and, he kind of got the fear for going on stage again. So that was something that he was wanting to deal with. And so we just thought, well, let's do it. Let's see who we can get on and what advice they might give. You never know with these things where they're going to lead. So it became just a thing that we did. I used to travel up, been traveling up to London to do the first few episodes, and I think it just kind of snowballed. We just managed to get, I think maybe we started doing it in the end of 2018, and podcasts again. There's just a bit of like a sort of renaissance for podcasts. I think I was really into podcasts back when like the Ricky Gervais show and stuff came out, which was the kind of the dawn of the iPod coming out, and I guess those sort of mid 2000s when there was only a handful of people seemed to be doing them, and it was a bit kind of niche. But I remember thinking, what a great way to create your own radio show. I mean, I think everyone wants to be a radio DJ at some point in their life, so it was kind of that idea. And I remember I was working at a toy shop at the time, thinking I'd really love to do a podcast. And I remember talking to a few friends about it. I had an actor friend, and said, let's do a podcast together. But we didn't have any idea what we were going to do or what we were going to talk about. So it never really came to anything. But it was something that always stuck with me. And then when I've had been able to sort of get a bit of a followership, following on Twitter and stuff, it meant that I guess I had a bit more clout to be able to sort of ask people to come on. So that's kind of it. I think
it's also what you talk about. I mean, I think where you talk about the idea of why it's fine to falter and fail and how to put yourself up again. I think that's something that's very relatable as a topic. And I think you've said in a few of your podcasts with Jim that I've listened to, where, it's amazing the direction that it's gone off on with some of the conversations that you've had. You've covered that's where the book's come from now, hasn't it? Because you've got the book obviously being published.
Yeah, we've written a book, which is, obviously solely based on our experiences of doing the podcast. Yeah, the amazing thing was it kind of started as a creative thing. Like we would talk to creative people about what going blank would mean to them. So obviously the title of the podcast is Blank, meaning going blank, when we have those blank moments in life, difficult moments, what they are to us and how we get through them. And I guess, like I say, it was more of a creative thing to start with. Jim and I were talking to other creatives. It would be other comedians, writers, actors and stuff like that. And, there's kind of almost obvious kind of things that happen to people who are creative. It might be writer's block, for example, or going blank on stage if you're performing, those kind of things. But as we started to talk to these people, it was emerging that there were other things that blank meant to them. So, it could be imposter syndrome or public failure, social anxiety, grief, education, where what their education was like, sleep deprivation. So there's all these different things, like these things that kind of, frustrate everybody. Everybody has one of those things happen to them. So that's kind of how it came. And so then we started to expand the kind of people we'd get on. So we could start to get people who are in sports on, and we've had politicians on and business people. So because it encompasses so many different industries, it's not just the creative industry. And that's what's been fascinating about it is being able to, that premise of the idea of the podcast has been able to sort of filter out into other industries, which is fascinating for us. It means we get to talk to lots of different types of people.
I mean, I can remember the very first... Well, I can remember when you were talking about it before it was born. Just kind of shows how long much longer than that, actually. And I've worked with you on a few of your books. Your first book, I love this book. Fearsome Beastie.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just a fab book, isn't it? And then that won the People's Book Prize, didn't it? And the Heart of I
Wick.
can't say that.
Wick.
Heart
Which
of
is a
Wick
beautiful
Book Awards.
place.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah, it's on the borders in Scotland. It's an absolutely beautiful
Oh.
little town. It was a milling town, so there was lots of. When we went and visited, we had a little tour around, and they had quite a lot of social deprivation there because it was a very industrial town. They had mills and stuff, and then actually some of the reasons like the award came out was because they were trying to sort of give aspiration to the young people in the town, because a lot of the industry within it, which was like, let's say, mills and stuff like that, had closed down. So yeah, it's a beautiful place on the borders. So I was very, very privileged to go up there and receive an award for the book. Yeah, the it's a funny book. It's quite dark. It's sort of reminiscent. It's the kind of books I used to like as a kid, the sort of Grimm Brothers tales. And there's a picture book called Not Now Bernard, which is one of my favourites, which is about it's a book by David McKee, who, if you remember Mr. Ben, he created Mr. Ben. That was his. So
Love Mr. Ben.
That kind of artwork is his sort of signature. But yeah, the book Not Now Bernard, which was a great inspiration, is about a little boy who says, who basically can't get the attention of his parents. He goes round the house. He meets this monster in the garden, and he goes around and he says to his mum, like, "Oh, there's a monster in the garden." And his mum's like, "Oh, not now, but I haven't got time to, And then he goes to see his dad, and his dad's busy reading the paper, and he said, "Oh, there's a monster in the garden." His dad's like, "Oh, not now, And they're sort of dismissing him all the time. He's trying to, he's craving their attention. And then eventually the monster just eats Bernard, unfortunately. And then, there's a bit at the end of the book where the monster's in bed, obviously, like, he's like taking up residence in the house. And the parents, he's like, "Oh, there's like, go to sleep, Bernard." And the monster's like, "Well, I'm a monster. I'm not Bernard." And they're like, "Not now, Bernard." So it's like a really like tragic kind of book, but it's a massive inspiration to the Fearsome Beastie, because obviously, for those who haven't read the book, this beast kind of comes to the local village and starts consuming some of the children within it, and they have to kind of one of them has to go and find their grandmother who's a bit nifty with an axe to come and sort him out. So yeah, it's quite dark. It's one of those books. I love reading it when parents are present, because all the kids are like giggling and laughing and really into it, and you can make it quite pantomime when you're reading it, but all the parents are like gasping and thinking, this is I don't want my child reading this at night because this is going to give them nightmares. But kids love it.
You're great at reading to kids. I've been to a few book launches with you, had the privilege of being with you, and you've read, because you've 11 books, is that right? 11? Or was Blank? I mean,
Blank will be number 12, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, number 12. So, but certainly, one of the books that obviously we worked on together was your Little Bird on the Moon that we did with some of the schools, and I mean that's a beautiful book, and I know that was inspired from some of your own experience. You always talk about your lovely mum. I feel emotional just saying it, who died of leukemia, and that inspired that book, didn't it? And that's a beautiful book. Would you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I think she's been such an inspiration to your life, hasn't she?
Yeah, absolutely. And someone I think about on a very regular basis. Yeah, I kind of always we've always been really open with our boys about loss and grief. I mean, I've lost my mum, I lost my dad when I was in my early 20s, and Michelle, my wife, lost her dad when she was a teenager. So, loss and of a parent has always been a big part of both our lives. So we've always tried to be quite honest with the kids and candid about it. Never wanted to sort of stray away from the subject, particularly. And I remember it was one night, Sunny, our youngest, had a sort of bedtime reading at school. They had like a little event on, and all the teachers were going to get like their pajamas on and read bedtime stories to the kids. So I remember us we had to walk back to school, and I remember him just looking up at the stars, and he said, "When you see a star, it touches your heart." And it was just this really profound kind of thing, and it just made me think, it was around the same time I was sort of explaining about my mum and all that kind of stuff, and there's this kind of idea mythical idea that we become stardust when we pass away. So there's a kind of idea of stardust and, living forever within the stars in the sky. And whoa. And I think we do live on in some respects, without getting too spiritual.
Too,
I'm not a particularly spiritual person, but I think we do live on in other things, like we leave a legacy. We all leave a legacy in one way or another. So it might not be a physical way, but we leave, we leave letters we've written or pictures we've taken, or even if it's just minor things like that, or memories that we have, like you might have a memory of going to get an ice cream on the beach or something, and that's that's part of the legacy we leave behind. So those memories and thoughts. So yeah, that was kind of the idea of the book, and I wanted to write something that children in that, like I said earlier, that very special time of reading a story at bedtime, where is often a chance for adults to have a conversation with their child about maybe difficult things. It might be about their day, how they're feeling, and actually books are a way of conveying those feelings and thoughts. And so yeah, it was a chance for people to have that difficult conversation maybe with their child about and the book's kind of about a life cycle. It's a little girl.
It's a beautiful book.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was very, very proud of it, and beautiful illustrations by Iris Depp, who did the illustrations. And yeah, I'm really, really proud of that book, and it's I'm really pleased it was able to find a home somewhere. So that's nice.
And you also shared some poems book, didn't you? Tell us a bit about that, because that was inspired as well, wasn't it? The book. It's like it's looking at me there.
Which one?
I might cut that bit. Oh, exactly. Well, that's what I mean.
I've written a few books on poetry. Funny enough, when
I suppose when you talk children's books, you've written a lot of poems for children's books, but your 100 days.
Oh, yeah, 150 days. Yeah, so that was my first kind of adult novel. Funny enough, that does actually lead back to a project I started when I first started writing. The first thing I ever wrote was, it was kind of a collection of lyrics and poems that I put together, which were kind of loosely based around kind of teenage angst and loss and just general kind of like me being a bit miserable. But I just did it as a self-release thing. It was called Linear Hymns, and I just sold it to friends and family really. And the money that we made, it went to leukemia research, and it was kind of my first sort of, it was almost like a demo tape for my writing in a way. I look back at it now, it wasn't great, but it was a chance for me to sort of express myself and start to sort of look at how I find my voice and all that kind of stuff. And 150 Days, which is my novel, which came out sort of springtime last year, is kind of, it's like the second album of that first demo. It's very much a story about my own experiences of losing my mum, and some things that were very true to life around that time. So the protagonist in the book is suffering from pneumonia, which I had when I was very little, and meant that I couldn't go and see my mum because she was having treatments. So she was having chemotherapy and stuff. So obviously she was at risk for infection. So obviously she had to sort of be shielded, which is a word we hear a lot these days now.
Isn't it just?
And yeah, it was kind of ironic that it came out in March, just after we'd gone into first lockdown. So there was a lot of parallels between that story and what we were sort of seeing around us. But yeah, so it's the idea of that. And then obviously, I was a lot younger when my mum died. I was 6. The protagonist in the book is a teenager, but a lot of the teenage moments in the book are real. I lived in a 1-bedroom flat with my dad. He had a drink problem. We were always sort of hard up, and my nan it was my nan's flat, and it was like a residential flat, and she used to sleep on the sofa, and me and my dad shared a room. It was a weird existence at the time. You never wanted to bring any friends round or anything, because it was just we sort of living in this sort of weird hovel. And so, yeah, it was a weird time. But a lot of that is in the book. There's a lot of stuff I wanted to sort of put out there. But there are fictional elements to it as well. There's a sort of love interest that the boy sort of finds hope in a physiotherapist that sort of helps him or sort of shows him the way, really. So it's kind of semi-autobiographical. There's a lot of me in it. But, yeah, it was a great thing to write, and something I'd wanted to write for a long time.
Well, I think it's an amazing book. And I think what you share and the fact that you do share experience as well makes it, all the more compelling to read. And obviously you do have a wonderful wife and 2 children, and she's been a great support. I know. Have you done your photo booth photo this year?
We did. We put masks on.
Did you? Did you? Because how many times now has that been in the national newspapers? I've seen it a few years. It's like, it's back in again. It's back in again.
Well, it's an easy story to sort of. Well, I suppose it's nice actually, because it's nice. It's like kind of a
really nice.
bit more of a feel good story, isn't it? And sometimes there's with so much clickbait and stuff around these days, it's quite nice to maybe read about something a bit more positive. Although don't ever read the Daily Mail comments, because they're always quite harsh.
No, read the Daily Mail comments. But how many years now? So you've been doing literally photo booth photos of well, it's all of you now, isn't it?
It's all of us now. So it literally started. I mean, I think Michelle and I had been seeing each other for probably a month or so, like or maybe 6 weeks, and we were in Brighton. I think we'd gone to the cinema. And then in Brighton Station, they had a photo booth, and I said, should we mark the occasion? And then I think we just found ourselves back there kind of a year later. I said, should we do it? We could do it again. So and then obviously it became a tradition, and obviously we include the kids now as well. So
how many are we up to?
22 now, because so we got married in 2002. We were. So we've been together since 2000. So so there's a couple of extra ones in there, obviously before, and then the children are now. And the problem is that it's a bit of a squeeze in the photo booth. It's not as pleasant an experience as it used to be, because I'm always at the bottom and everyone's kind of sitting on me. So we have.
Well, as you get older, Giles, it's going to be like, as you get older, and the boys, they might have families. I'm sure they're going to. It's going to get a busy booth.
Not happening.
But you might have to have a photographer come into the home and do some kind of clever, sophisticated tech, such as we're doing today.
We'd have to all squeeze in. I think that's the beauty of it, is that the fact that it's in this little booth and we're all sort of squashed together. I think that's the sort of nothing. And I don't know about you, but when I was younger, it was always kind of a thing you did with your mates and stuff. Wasn't it, to go in a photo booth?
Yeah, and, especially your pals, many with girlfriends, sort of 4 of us crammed in, and boyfriends, obviously. But it's a real, and it's sort of come back, hasn't it? Because you can my sister's a wedding photographer, and she has an amazing business. She bought one of the photo booths for weddings.
Exactly. Yeah.
So much fun. I mean, I just have one at home.
Yeah, I mean, they're amazing, aren't they? Yeah, my brother had that at his wedding, and we wear the silly glasses and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they're really good fun. So
much fun.
I'm glad that there's been a renaissance for them, because there's something very special about them. A bit like Polaroid cameras as well.
I was going to say, absolutely. Yeah. I totally, but they're so expensive now.
I know, and the films cost loads as well, don't they?
£2 per photo. Yeah, exactly. Now, with your first book ever to be published, The Fierce and Beastie, and that won the People's Book Prize, was that hard to find a publisher? Because you're incredibly resilient, I would say. I know, we've always had open and honest conversations about, mental health and everything, but you've shared with me in conversations how it's incredibly competitive, especially being a children's book author. How did you find that, finding a publisher? Was it hard? How did you feel about it?
Well, funnily enough, The Fierce and Beastie, although it was the first book I got published, it wasn't the first book deal I got. The first book deal I got was for a story I wrote called The Things You Never Knew About Dinosaurs.
Love that book.
That got, I got a publishing deal for that really quickly after I started sending it out. And I thought, this is easy, isn't it? This is great. I've made it. And I remember I had a development deal with another publisher, which came quite quickly after that as well. So I had these two kind of things going on, and I really thought I'd made it. But then you suddenly get brought back down to earth quite quickly. And I think it was, it was about 18 months before I got another book deal. It was really... And that was a real learning curve, actually, on the brutalities of... And I was kind of aware anyway. I've been in a band, I've been playing in bands for 3 years trying to make it. So I was kind of aware that it wasn't going to be that straightforward. But I think when you get a taste for something, you get something quite early doors, you think, okay, I'm in here. And also, I suppose on the outside, when you go in, you think, oh, I'm going to get like a multiple book deal or something like that. Like this publisher's going to want to publish everything that I do. And again, it doesn't work like that. You know, I haven't worked with the same publisher twice, I don't think. They've all been with different publishers. So I think there are lessons to be learned along the way, for sure. And you do. And it's the thing I say to anybody that's sort of asking me, and I get loads of people messaging me about, like, they've written a story, or they want to write a story, and they're trying to get published. And I always say that perseverance is the biggest thing. It really is. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not willing to persevere at it and take it on the chin sometimes, that you're not gonna, you know, and it's hard. It's really hard, you know. To that level of rejection is brutal. But if you can't use it in some way going forwards, then yeah, you're gonna find it really difficult to progress.
And I guess doing what you love as well, which is something you've always done. You've always been very passionate about everything that you do, and it's focusing on that. And then, you know, you have had a lot of books published, and there's some people out there that probably have tried, and that can be hard. And I imagine now at the moment, obviously, you're well connected in industries, like you said, you've been in the music industry and books and actors. I mean, there must be a lot of people really struggling out there at the moment anyway, with everything that's going on at the moment. The whole world's gone a bit blank, hasn't it? But obviously as well, there's people out there that just aren't getting opportunities to be in films or theatre, or it's a tough time for that sector. Talking about the music industry, I want to go back to that with you. I mean, obviously 2 highlights of your music career. First one clearly being at the Forum, our local Tunbridge Wells.
Loved to play at the Forum.
You played at the Forum, didn't you?
But one of the only places we had a bit of a following, actually. I remember.
Of course.
I remember it was because it was such a great rock venue, and you could like all sorts. I mean, all sorts of people played there. But I mean, we were quite heavy hard rock band, and it was just perfect for that. You know, it had that kind of feel about it. I guess because it's a converted toilet. And ironically, we used to rehearse in a converted toilet in Brighton as well. We sort of had this. It's like
toilet.
Yeah,
theme.
rock bands often have to sort of like turn up to toilets, and you know. But no, I loved playing at the Forum. It was one of my favourite venues. I used to love the promoter. He was a young guy called Lawrence. And actually all the guys that worked at the Forum were quite young, so they were a bit more kind of tapped into what was going on. I don't know what it's like now, but certainly when I played, which is sort of like the sort of early noughties, there was a really great group of people down there. And yeah, I remember we played a couple of headline gigs down there, and there was even one where we had to do an encore, which is very unusual for a small band like ours. So yeah, we did it was great. I used to enjoy the nights down the Forum.
And you have sort of, you know, had a bit of a go at music again lately, haven't you? Was it last year or year before last? You get back with the band a little bit and do a few. I'm sure a little while ago you did a few things.
Well, we've always been recording. I mean, I stood in a band called Burnt House, and we when we can afford it, we go in the studio and do some tracks. I mean, we've got stuff on Spotify and iTunes and stuff. So yeah, that's my favourite thing to do now, is going in the studio. We rehearse, you know, we don't rehearse, obviously we haven't rehearsed for quite a while during the pandemic, but generally we rehearse, you know, a few times a month, and we're always writing stuff. That's the thing that drives us really, is writing new material. And we don't gig as much these days. We do the occasional gig, but writing and creating is the thing that really drives us. And going in the studio is just sort of the icing on the cake when you can put it down on. And, you know, there's a great producer we work with, Dave Lynch, who works he's got a studio over in Eastbourne called Echo Zoo, and it's a really lovely, I've recorded everything I've ever done, I've recorded over there. It's a brilliant studio. Dave's a brilliant engineer. He's worked with some really, really big names. And, yeah, that's the thing I enjoy the most. Going in the studio and laying down some songs is just magical, really magical.
And Glastonbury, I think you had a little bit of a...
Oh, God, yeah, that was 20 years ago, yeah. Yeah, it was year 2000.
Studio, Glastonbury, kind of, you know, both those things are pretty awesome.
Glastonbury was amazing. It was amazing. It was the year David Bowie was headlining, so it was a magical year. It was also the year, I think it was also the year that they had the most gate crashers. So there was
Was that your influence, Giles?
I think there was I think there was almost twice as many people there than normal. It was immense, like the amount of people, and I'm saying immense in not such a good way. And it was like just crazy. I mean, there was so many people there. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. It's an amazing place. I mean, I haven't been back since, unfortunately, but it was an amazing experience. We played like 11 o'clock on the Saturday morning on the new band's tent, which I think is now called the John Peel tent. We went round the previous day just flying because we weren't that well known, so we just went round the whole venue flying. Just spent like hours walking around. It's about 9 acres. No, it's bigger than that. I think about 50 acres or something. So we whatever it was. Anyway, we were walking around the farm and just giving out flyers to everybody, and we had a decent amount of people turn up for an 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning. It wasn't too bad. We had a few thousand people there, so it was amazing, incredible experience, and one I will never forget for sure.
Oh, brilliant! And I mean, listening to you talk now, as you say, you lost your mum when you were very young, and then you didn't have an ideal situation with your dad and living conditions that you were in. But you'll be an inspiration to a lot of people. I mean, could you have imagined back then that you would have done all these things, been in a band, been an award-winning author? I mean, your podcast show's award-winning as well. I mean, that's another great achievement, and I'm sure you're a great inspiration for your children as well. And I know how proud of you Michelle, your wife, is. So it really, what would be sort of any words that you could, because at the moment there probably are people that are isolated, that are in conditions that possibly we like to think we're all tucked up at home with our families and loved ones and it's all happy days, but it's not necessarily, and this can be really tough for people. And also just trying to see a bit of light in the future. What would be any words of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny enough you saying about all the things that I've achieved, and sometimes you as creative people, or as people in general actually, sometimes you don't think about that in the respect that you're always thinking about what you're not achieving, or you're always thinking about like today's been crap because this didn't happen, or I didn't get that gig, or I didn't, you're thinking about the negative things because we our brains are sort of wired towards negativity, from our Neanderthal days, where we were sort of running away from wild beasts, but now it's it's kind of changed. As we've moved into the 21st century, our negativity comes from other things, and we go on social media and all these things. We see other people doing well, and you think, oh, well, I want to be doing that. And then you saying all those things makes me think I need to check in with myself a little bit more and say to myself,
yeah,
wow, actually you've done loads of amazing things, and actually it's a thing that we say on the pod all the time. It's become a bit of a catchphrase for Jim, and it's like giving yourself the win, because we don't do it enough to ourselves. We would always big up other people, but we don't do it to ourselves enough, and I think sometimes, and I've said this before, like we become our own worst trolls a lot of the time. We're always kind of at ourselves because we haven't done something, or we haven't achieved something, or we've said something wrong to somebody, or we perceive is wrong, and we just need to give ourselves a bit more of a break. And I think especially at the moment, it doesn't matter if you do bare minimum. Like, just give yourself the break, give yourself the win, and take care of yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's it, isn't it? It's taking your awareness to the things that are good, rather than the things that you've achieved over the things that you haven't. Because like you say, it's much easier to focus on that, and it does sometimes take someone else to say, oh, because to other people your life can be a dream, and then you're in it and you just take it for granted. Or there's so many times that you're constantly striving and you don't really enjoy the present moment. That's always a bit of a waste, isn't it? So
and it's the sort of thing like there's that thing like we wouldn't talk to other people the way we talk to ourselves, and
we wouldn't.
And I think that's really important to remember that when you're beating yourself up about something. You would never say that to someone else. You wouldn't dream of it unless you're sort of like.
And it's often the kindest people who have the, really do critique themselves internally. And I think that's it. And you just, say to sort of people when they're kind, you're like, would you say that? I've got clients that I work with, and it's like, would you speak that way to somebody else? And then it's like, no, I wouldn't. So why do I do that to myself? And it's the same with when it's easy for me to tell you, Giles, you're amazing. You've bought all these books out and you've accomplished all these amazing things. But how often do you sort of sit back and go, wow, actually, I've done pretty good. Definitely a big win.
Well, I think before we came on, I was like, oh, I was being coy about stuff and thinking, oh, I don't like talking about myself. So we all do it. I've done it in the last half an hour. It. So yeah,
every single person does it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's nice talking to yourself is that, and actually, I think that's the beauty of podcasts, and especially with Blank, what you've done is we're all just human beings. We're all people. We all have the same feelings, fears. We all experience them. Some people talk about them more than others. Some people are more open about it, but guaranteed. And unless you're literally a psychopath, chances are that you have empathy and you have feelings, and we're all experiencing a lot of hard things at the moment. But I think, inspiring people to write is amazing. And I think at the moment with children being at home, I think it's great. And yeah, I mean, books just takes you to another planet, doesn't it? What would you say has been one of your highest points in your career? Because you have done lots of different things. If there was one thing you could kind of think really stood out.
It's really hard because, we obviously be going over these things and saying all these nice things that I've done. I guess, when you see whenever I see my work, like the other day, my new book dropped in through the letterbox, and you open up the parcel and you see it and you think, oh, I did that. So that's always special when you see your work come into fruition, I think. So for me, it's always those moments. But I think if it's one to sort of defining moment, it would probably have to be what would it have to be? Really hard. It's really hard to think.
Well, there's a lot to choose from by the looks of it, and that's rather nice.
I think probably the biggest highlight for me in my career is reading that first book to my children.
Oh,
in that setting, and actually thinking, like looking at them enjoying it and thinking, okay, I wrote this.
Yeah.
And this is, I completely made this, and I made you.
Yes.
And so I and I was thinking, that's pretty special.
I think that's a hard one to top. I'd agree with you there, definitely. What are your aspirations, Giles? Have you got more? I mean, are you going to write more children's books? Or obviously now you're moving, we've got Blank coming out, which is great. When can we actually get our hands on that? We can go onto Amazon at the moment, can't we, and order it?
Yeah, it's on offer at the moment, so you can get
it. Is it?
You can get it cheaper. Get on there and pre-order it now.
Right, pre-order it now today. We'll put a link
here later on
for the book. But it looks beautiful, the book, actually. I think
Thank you.
I've shared your video, which shows obviously opening the book, which I love that you did that.
I've actually got it.
But it does look.
Which is, I don't generally walk around with my books.
Yes, you
but
do.
I do have
don't
to,
lie. You've got a jacket on. You open it up and there's like books in your pockets.
Yeah, I'm not that Del boy with his watches. But yeah,
it looks beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
who did the cover?
Really
who did the illustration on the cover? I really like the cover.
Yeah, so I mean, this published with Quadrille, who are a wonderful non-fiction publisher. I'm really pleased to be working with them. The design was by Jack Smith, but it's photo by a guy called Daniel Day.
Looks great.
Yeah, so it's just
really nice,
really apt actually.
That can sit on my bookshelf behind
it's beautiful. And the
my home Zoom.
And the lettering's all embossed as well. You can't really see it on the Zoom, but yeah, it's very, very nice. Books. I mean, I love just the feel of books anyway. I'm a book lover in that respect. But yeah, I mean, aspirations. I mean, I'm always looking for new things to get my teeth into. I mean, I've had a break from writing since pretty much since doing that book. because, going back to what we were saying earlier, it's still difficult to get your work published. It's always a struggle to get your work out there. So I mean, I've written several. I've got several novels that I've completed, but I can't sell them. So that's always in the back there. But yeah, you just have to keep moving forward though, and keep creating stuff and keep making stuff. And some of it will fly and some of it won't. But the joy is in the making most of the time. So you have to make sure that you keep that in mind.
Well, I love what you do, and I love working with you.
Thank you.
I've
Well,
had
likewise.
the pleasure of working alongside you for. Whoa! I mean, we're going to get near to a decade at some point,
I know.
soon, aren't we? It's not far off. Clearly, we don't look that, but it's been a joy, and certainly as far as podcasts, you definitely introduced me personally to ideas I've had around podcasts, and this big chat and other ideas that we've worked on recently has been something that I've been thinking about for a long, long time. For you with Blank, I feel like that you really did pioneer something. I know that you were listening to them, but it amazes me to this day that I speak to people and they're like, what's a podcast? But I think now through the pandemic, everyone can listen and enjoy. And yeah, thank you for that, because I think it's been great, and it is something brilliant that everyone can just tap into, isn't there? And there's so many good ones out there, isn't there? I mean, there's so many good ones.
You can pretty much, if whatever you're into, you can pretty much find a podcast about it. And I think that's the beauty of it. It's just such a wonderful medium. I think as regards to having like candid conversations, I think it's, I can't watch like chat shows anymore that are on TV because they just don't delve into where you can get to someone in a podcast, So I know if I want to hear a very thorough kind of conversation with someone that I like, in the public eye, then I'll listen to it on a podcast. I won't find it on, radio or TV. So it's brilliant for that. And yeah, I mean, I'm into all sorts of different podcasts. I mean, obviously even football, there's loads of great football podcasts, true crime. I quite like true crime stuff. There's just so much out there. Cooking, whatever you were into, you will be able to find a podcast for it. And there are some amazing ones out there. And yeah, so it's lovely to be in the industry now, and see everyone doing, everyone's got their own little piece of the pie, but we're not, no one's treading on anyone else's toes to a certain extent.
Well, that's it. It's a form of expression, isn't it? And it's great that people can express themselves. And I'm really excited to do more bite-sized ones with you.
Yes.
We're going to have some fun on, because obviously we've been working on the soapbox ones that we haven't been able to do much more with at the moment, but we're going to do some bite-sized things, which will be fun. So I'll get to pick your brains, and then I can literally listen to your podcast, your voice, everything through devices everywhere at the moment, which while I'm ironing, which clearly I do all the time. But thank you so much, Giles, and thank you for everything that you do with us here at Chatty, because you're a very loved member of our team, but also you're just wonderful what you do. Thank you. Keep on inspiring and keep on and let's get you back in the forum. Let's do it.
I would love to play the forum again. One day, yeah.
Let's make it happen. Let's manifest it. Let's set that intention.
Absolutely. I would love to play a gig at the forum again. That would take me back. God. Yeah, some great times at the forum.
So basically, people need to go out, buy a book while they can, Blank, and check out the podcast. And Giles Paley-Phillips is quite a unique name, so it's
not many.
If you need to find him, there's not many. Yeah, it's a good name. Follow him on Twitter and do what you need to do. But yeah, just lovely to chat with you today.
Thank
Giles.
you. Thank you for your time.
Okay, take care.
And
we'll
you.
speak to you soon.